I'll get it all together in a minute. This has been a hectic week. All right, if you have your Bibles, I want to share with you. I'm trying to figure out a title for it. We're going to start in 1 Samuel, the second chapter of Samuel. Three great men that, in my book, turned out to be losers. And they were tremendous men of God. Two of them were priests, one of them was a prophet, and one of them was a king. And so, when I say this, or that, they were great men for God, and Eli was a great priest for God. Samuel was a great man for God. He was the king anointer, and David was the king. He accomplished a great deal. But all three of these men were losers in my book. Because, see, you can win the whole world to the Lord, but if you don't win your family, you're not worth your salt. And all three of these great men, their children went astray and broke God's laws. And so let's just look at Eli for just a moment over in 1 Samuel, second chapter, and verse 22. Now, Eli was a great priest. He was over the Lord's people for a number of years. In fact, about it, Eli lived to be 98 years old, and he had sons. Now, in verse 22 says, "Now Eli was very old, and heard all that his sons did unto all Israel, how they lay with women at the assembly and at the door of the tabernacle and of the congregation." They not only had sexual relations in God's house, in God's things, but they stole from God. And Eli was you might say, he was the number one priest of that generation. But you see, he raised three losers. Now, I don't know about you, but I take great pride and thank God a great deal. I've had the wonderful privilege of baptizing everybody in my family. But I made sure that they knew the Lord. And when I married Sally, she'd never been baptized. Well, she was saved, but she hadn't been baptized. In my book, baptism is a symbol. It doesn't save you, but it's telling the world that you are saved. And both of my sons, I've had the privilege of leading them to the Lord and baptizing them. And little Ginger, I didn't lead her to the Lord. She went to hear a friend of ours, a ventriloquist, a lady, and she got saved but I had the privilege of baptizing her. Now, Eli was heartbroken. Fact about it, the ark was captured, and it went into captivity with the enemy. And it says that Eli was sitting on a rock he got the news that the ark had been taken by the enemy. The people put a great deal of emphasis on that box. And so when he heard the news, the Bible said Eli fell backwards. He had a heart attack, fell backwards, and broke his neck. He was a very large man, and I don't want to be ugly. He was just big and fat. That's the best way to describe him. Well, so, and we see that Samuel comes on the scene, and in 1 Samuel chapter 8, we all know the story of Samson. His mama could not have children, and to a Jewish woman, that was the greatest honor that she could have from God, was to have a child, preferably a male child. That way the inheritance could be passed on, and so she was barren. So she goes to the temple once a year, and she's praying. Eli is the priest. Eli, she was praying in such a agony and such earnestness and begging God. Eli thought she was a little intoxicated and thought she was drunk. And she said, "No, I have a burden. I'm barren and I want to bear a son." Now, Eli prayed for her, and she got pregnant, and she bare a son, and she named him Samuel. But she'd made a vow to the Lord. She said, "God, if you'll let me have a male child, I will dedicate him to you." Now, I've told the story many times, but I didn't know. My mother had a miscarriage before I was born, and it was a boy. And my mother promised God. She said, "God, if you let me have another child, a boy child, I will commit him to the Lord." Now, I didn't know this until after I started preaching, that my mother had made that promise to the Lord. Thank God, I've been raised in church all my life. And I thank God for that, because it's easy to stray in this world, because Satan is so powerful and demons are so wicked, but it's easy to stray in this world. Now, Samuel went to live with the priest. He dedicated him to the Lord. He went to live with the priest, Eli. Now, he was a great man. He was a king anointer. He anointed, if you remember, he anointed, and because if you'll read there just a little bit in the chapter 8, "And it came to pass that Samuel was old, that he made his sons judge over Israel." Now the name of his first son was Joel, and all right, but skip on down, and verse 3, "And his sons walked not in the ways, but turned aside after lucrative things, took bribes, and perverted judgment." They turned out to be losers, bad guys. So I said, here's two great guys, two great kings. I've noticed over the years that preaching revivals and full-time evangelism, that some of the homes that I've had to stay in, the meanest person in that church would be the preacher's son. Preacher's kids, PKs we call them. And why is that? Well, so many of them rebel against it because over in Proverbs it says, paraphrase, it says, spare the rod, spoil the child. Well, you know, my mama told everybody, I raised my children with a ruler. Well, let me explain what that ruler was. I called it the Board of Education. But that ruler was a 1x4 board that she had gotten up at Mobile Lumber Company when they opened up. The first time they opened up, they were giving these rulers. This 1x4 it had the ruler. It looked like a ruler. And one end of that 1x4 was worn out. All the numbers were off of it. But that's what she said. I raised my kids with a ruler. And she didn't mind taking the Board of Education and placing it. And but my dad only gave me one spanking in my whole life. And I want to say I was innocent. I was 4.5 years old, maybe 5. We'd gone down to visit a fellow lived down the road. Now, for you younger people, I picked up what is called a water bucket hook. And it's just a piece of metal about 8-9 inches long, hook that you hung the water bucket on, go down in the well to get the water. Well, it was laying out in the wood pile. Everybody had a fireplace, so everybody had a wood pile. That water bucket hook was out there, and I got to playing with it like a plow. Well, when it got time to go, I didn't think anything about it. It was a piece of junk laying in the wood pile. I carried it home with me. Next day, our neighbor come up to the house. He said, "Hey, chap, did your boy pick up my water bucket hook?" Now, I happened to be at that particular time down in the front of the house in the porch. We didn't have grass in the yard in those days. I had the water bucket hook in my hand, and I was playing with it. And so, my daddy, it was a good mile to the other man's house. My dad only whipped me one time in my life. But he spanked me all the way from our house to that other man's house for stealing. You know what? It made such an impression on me. As far as I know, I've never stole anything since then. I mean, I've been tempted, but I remember the pain that I went through as a child. So that was the only spanking my dad. And from that day on, if I did something wrong, first thing I'd do when I got home, I went and told my dad. Because you didn't let him find out about it, because he'd get mad at you. And I hated one thing, sometimes our big time, fellowship time was around supper table. I've been in homes, you don't speak, you just eat and that's it. Our home, when we sat down at the supper table, that's when we started, we talked and we planned and we had fellowship. And I hated for my dad to just get upset with me and just look at me. I'd rather for him to spank me than give me that look, because it hurt worse than anything. What are you saying, preacher? Today, we have parents that are not disciplining their children. Why? Most of them are afraid of their children. No, I'm not afraid of my children. Well, you're afraid of them because you think they won't love you. But I'm going to tell you what. My dad spanked me. My mama spanked me. They chastised me. I spanked my boys. My boys, they love me, and I love them, and my parents love me. No, they're not going to quit loving you. They may not like you for a day or two, but they'll be back. But now here were these great priests, great men of God, and they failed in their children, raising their children. All right, now David. Well, now I want to go back to Samuel, the 8th chapter, and so you see in the third verse, and his sons walked not in the way, but turned aside after lucre and took bribes and perverted judgment. All right, now God assured Samuel, and he looked down in verse 7. And the Lord said unto Samuel, hearken unto the voice of the people. What was the voice of the people? At this time, they're saying, we want a king over us. We don't want your sons over God leading. They're nothing but liars and thieves. And so, verse 6 it says, but the thing displeased Samuel, and he said, give us a king to judge us. And the Lord told him, verse 7, and the Lord said unto Samuel, hearken unto their voice of the people in all that they say unto thee, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me. They've rejected the Lord. All right, now that's two of these great men. All right, now I want you to, if you will, turn over in your Bibles to 2 Samuel, and we'll look at a very famous king, and that was King David. All right, now David was a man after God's own heart. He was a fair-complected redhead. Now, I never liked redheads, because in high school, I had an old guy called Red Tillman, and he's from Tillman's Corner. Every time we met, I didn't care where we was at, we'd get in a fight. So I say this story